Okay, this is for accurate recall on what I saw. This is Keith Geffro. What I saw going to Richard's second hearing in Marion County Annex Center. It was a courtroom B in front of Judge Ochoa, however you pronounce that word, or his name rather. When Richard was called, he was helped in by two officers that were behind him. They had to help him go in through the door because he was unstable on his feet. They had to help him in up to the counter or the little ledger that he was leaning on. He had to lean on this ledger because it was obvious that he couldn't stand. He was wobbling quite a bit. He didn't have any. He didn't have much balance to him. The judge then spoke with the attorney a little bit, and then the attorney was asking Richard a question, and Richard took a long time to answer the question, and when he did speak, he was trying to say that he hadn't been arraigned yet, but he could barely get it out of his mouth, and he sounded like he was extremely intoxicated, like he'd been on a drinking binge or something. But anyway, he was incoherent and mumbling. His words came out all slurred and mumbled, and you could barely hear him. He was struggling to maintain. He was struggling to stay standing, so he had to lean over on this little ledger that was behind the glass there. And after the judge got tired of trying to understand what Richard was saying, he made a statement of, "Why did you bring this man in here in this condition or like this?" I can't even hear him. He's mumbling. He's basically said he's incoherent. And then the two sheriffs came into the room and put their hand. They each, one on each side of him, and they said, "Well, you're done now." And then they pulled him out of the room. They had to help him out of the room. He couldn't maintain his own standing. He couldn't maintain his own body function, so to speak. He wasn't under his own power or his own strength. Later, I asked the attorney that was appointed to him, I asked him if he had talked to Richard. He said that the first time he talked to Richard, he was incoherent, and the second time he was attempting to talk with Richard, which was that day, he was also incoherent. It had been 1 week since that the attorney had talked with Richard, and because I was at his initial arraignment, and the attorney told Richard at the initial arraignment that he'd be up to see him that night. Well, if the attorney went to see him that night, and he already told me that he was incoherent the very first time he talked with Richard, that means that immediately after, or soon after his initial arraignment, they put him on psychotropics, and they sedated him so heavily that he couldn't talk coherently to his court-appointed attorney at that point. And that's about all that I have to say on that.